The call came on a Tuesday. Rain was hammering my apartment windows like bullets, and I was 3 whiskeys deep into forgetting my last case, a pharmaceutical exec who'd been selling diluted chemo drugs to children's hospitals, some stains on. Your soul don't wash out, no matter how much you scrub. Miss Chun, the voice was crisp, expensive. I have a proposition that might interest you. I should have hung up. Instead, I found myself in a downtown penthouse that cost more than most people see in a lifetime, facing a man whose name I recognized from the business pages. Thomas Greenspan, real estate mogul, philanthropist, and apparently someone with a very expensive grudge. James Wells, he said, sliding a thick folder across his mahogany desk. Ever hear of him? I had. Wells Industries, chemicals, manufacturing, the kind of empire built on other people's misery. What's he done? Murdered my brother? The words hung in the air like smoke. I opened the folder. Photos of a village downstream from a Wells chemical plant. Children with hollow eyes and 4 tubes. A newspaper headline that made my stomach turn. Cancer rates skyrocket in Riverside community. Michael was an environmental lawyer, Greenspan continued. He was building a case against Wells. Car accident, they said. Brake failure on a mountain road. His smile was razor sharp. Very convenient timing. I heard this song before. Rich. Man kills to protect his empire. Nothing new. What do you want from me? Everything. Financial records, communications, proof of the cover-up, and most importantly, he leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. I want you to get close to his daughter. That's when he showed me the photo. Bridget Wells, 28 years old, Harvard law graduate, and apparently the black sheep of the Wells family. The photo showed her at some charity gala, but even in that stuffy environment, she looked like she was planning an escape. Dark hair that caught the light, eyes that seemed to see right through the camera's lens, and a smile that suggested she knew secrets that would make grown men weep. She hates him, Greenspan said, has for years. Word is she's been quietly documenting his crimes. If anyone can bring him down, it's her. I should have walked away. Should have recognized the warning signs, the way my pulse quickened when I looked at her photo, the way something in her eyes seemed to call to something in mine. But the children in those medical files, I'd seen too much suffering to turn away now. What's my cover? You're Elena Martinez, freelance journalist writing a piece on environmental activism. You're passionate, idealistic, and you have a particular interest in corporate accountability. He slid another folder across the desk. Your entire backstory is in there. Memorize it. The plan was simple. Infiltrate Bridget's world, gain her trust, and extract everything she knew about her father's crimes. Simple, clinical, professional. I should have known better. I found her at a salsa studio in the Arts District. Not exactly where you'd expect to find a billionaire's daughter, but then again, Bridget Wells had never been predictable. The intelligence brief said she'd been taking classes there for 2 years, every Tuesday and Thursday at 7. I stood in the doorway, watching her move. She was teaching a beginner's class, her body fluid and graceful as water, guiding clumsy students through steps that looked impossible until she broke them down. She wore a simple green tank top and black leggings, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, and she was absolutely radiant. You coming in, or are you planning to memorize the routine from the hallway? I jerked back to reality. She was looking right at me, amused smile playing at her lips. Heat flooded my cheeks. When was the last time someone had caught me off guard? Sorry, I'm thinking about joining. Well, don't think too hard. Salsa is about feeling, not thinking. She gestured to an empty space on the floor. Come on, I'll show you. I stepped into the studio, hyper-aware of how out of place I looked in my jeans and sneakers among the elegant dancers. But Bridget didn't seem to notice. She approached with, The kind of confidence that comes from knowing exactly who you are. I'm Bridget, she said, extending her hand. Elena. The lie rolled off my tongue easily, too easily. Her handshake was firm, her skin warm. Elena, pretty name, Spanish, my grandmother's. Another lie that delivered with the kind of smile that had gotten me into more corporate boardrooms than I could count. Well, Elena, let's see what you've got. What I had was 2 left feet and absolutely no rhythm. But as Bridget's hands guided my movements, as she positioned my arms and corrected my stance, I found myself caring less about the steps and more about the way she smelled. Jasmine and something else. Something that made my head spin, relax. She murmured, her breath warm against my ear. You're fighting the music. I'm not much of a dancer. Everyone's a dancer. Some people just need permission to let go. Her hand slipped to my waist, steadying me as I nearly tripped over my own feet. The contact sent electricity shooting through my system, and I had to remind myself why I was here. This was a job. She was a mark, nothing more. But when she laughed at my clumsy attempts at a spin, when she patiently walked me through the same sequence for the 4th time, when she looked at me like I was something precious rather than pathetic. You're getting it, she said after I managed to complete a basic combination without embarrassing myself. See, you just needed to trust the music. As the class ended, I prepared to make my exit. I'd established contact, set the foundation. For future meetings, mission accomplished. Elena, wait. I turned back. She was gathering her things, but her eyes were on me. There's this little cafe around the corner. Terrible coffee, but amazing churros. Want to continue this conversation? Somewhere that doesn't echo? I should have declined. Should have kept things professional. Instead, I heard myself saying, I'd like that. The cafe was tiny, cramped, and smelled like burnt coffee and cinnamon. Bridget was right about the coffee. It was terrible. But sitting across from her in a corner booth, watching her eyes light up as she talked about her work with environmental activists, I found myself forgetting why I was there. Most people think I'm just some rich girl playing at rebellion, she said, breaking apart a churro with her fingers. They don't understand that I've been fighting my father's empire since I was old enough to understand what it was built on. What changed? When did you realize? I was 12. Her voice grew quiet. There was this documentary on TV about industrial pollution. They showed this village where kids were getting sick, really sick. Cancer, birth defects, the works. And there, in the corner of the screen during one shot, was a Wells Industries logo on a truck. She paused, staring into her coffee cup like it held answers. I asked my father about it at dinner. He told me it was propaganda, that environmental activists were just trying to attack successful businesses. But I could see it in his eyes. He was lying. That night, I started going through his files. And you found proof? I found everything. Falsified environmental reports, bribed officials, covered up studies. He's been poisoning people for decades, and every time someone gets close to exposing him, they have accidents. Car crashes, heart attacks, mysterious illnesses. The pain in her voice was real, raw. This wasn't the spoiled heiress I'd expected. This was someone who'd been carrying a terrible burden for years. Why haven't you gone to the authorities? She laughed bitterly. With what? Files one obtained. Illegally? The testimony of a daughter who's been publicly feuding with her father for years. Besides, half the officials who should be investigating him are on his payroll. So what's your plan? I'm building a case, slowly, carefully. Getting evidence that will stick, finding witnesses who can't be bought or intimidated. It's taking years, but I'm close, very close. I leaned forward, my pulse quickening. This was it, the opening I needed. What if I told you I might be able to help? Help how? I'm not just a journalist, Bridget. I investigate corporate malfeasance. I have sources, resources, ways of getting information that others can't. She studied me for a long moment, and I felt like she was seeing right through me. Why would you want to help me? Because I've seen what men like your father do to innocent people, and because dot dot. I paused, realizing I was about to say something that wasn't part of the script. Because I believe in what you're doing. The smile that spread across her face was like sunrise. You know what, Elena? I think this is the beginning of a beautiful partnership. If only I'd known how true that would turn out to be. Over the next few weeks, our partnership became something more. We met regularly, sometimes at the cafe, sometimes at her apartment, sometimes at galleries or protests where she was supporting environmental causes. Every meeting gave me more intelligence about Wells Industries, more evidence of James Wells' crimes. But it also gave me something I hadn't expected: genuine admiration for Bridget Wells. She wasn't just collecting evidence, she was actively working to help the victims of her father's crimes. She'd set up a foundation that provided medical care for affected communities, funded environmental cleanup efforts, and supported families who'd lost loved ones to industrial pollution. All anonymously, all from her own resources. My father thinks I'm just burning through my trust fund on liberal causes, she told me one evening as we walked through the city. He has no idea I'm systematically dismantling his life's work. Aren't you afraid? If he finds out what you're really doing, dot, dot, dot. Terrified, she admitted, but more afraid of what happens if I don't act. How many more children have to die while I worry about my own safety? We'd stopped walking. She was standing under a street lamp, her face illuminated by the warm glow, and I realized I was staring at her like she was something miraculous. What? She asked, noticing my expression. Nothing, you're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone spoiled, privileged, maybe a little naive. She laughed. 2 out of 3 isn't bad. I am privileged. I'd be lying if I said otherwise. But naive? Elena, I've known since I was 12 that my father is a monster that tends to age you quickly. Something in her voice made me step closer. Bridget, dot, dot. I know this is complicated, she said softly. Getting involved with someone when you're trying to take down one of the most powerful men in the country. But I can't seem to stay away from you. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't supposed to happen. I wasn't supposed to care about her, wasn't supposed to want to protect her from the truth about why I was really there. I can't stay away from you either, I whispered. She stepped closer, her hand reaching up to touch my face. Elena, I need you to know something. What I'm doing, it's dangerous. People who oppose my father tend to have very bad luck. If you're going to help me, if you're going to be part of this, you need to understand the risks. I understand. Do you? Because once you're in, there's no going back. He'll see you as a threat, and he doesn't leave threats alive. I should have walked away then. Should have told her the truth, that I was already in deeper than she knew, that I was the threat she was warning me about. Instead, I kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, like we were both testing the waters. But then she pulled me closer, and the kiss deepened. And I forgot everything except the taste of her lips and the way she made me feel like I was falling and flying at the same time. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Well, she said, her voice husky, that's one way to seal a partnership. 3 months in, I had everything Greenspan wanted. Financial records proving Wells Industries had been systematically falsifying environmental reports for decades. Communications between James Wells and government officials showing a pattern of bribery and corruption. Most damning of all, I had evidence linking Wells to the deaths of at least 6 people who'd threatened to expose his crimes, including Thomas Greenspan's brother. I also had something Greenspan hadn't paid for. I was completely, irrevocably in love with Bridget Wells. The realization hit me on a Tuesday night. We were in her apartment, spread out on her living room floor with documents covering every surface. She was explaining a complex money trail that connected Wells Industries to a series of shell companies, her hair falling across her face as she leaned over the papers. "See this transaction here?" she said, pointing to a bank statement. $50,000 to environmental consulting services, which doesn't exist. It's a front for bribing EPA officials. I wasn't looking at the documents. I was looking at her, the way her eyes lit up when she found a new piece of evidence, the way she unconsciously chewed her lower lip when she was thinking, the way she'd absently reached over to squeeze my hand when she got excited about a breakthrough. "Elena, are you listening?" "Sorry, I was just thinking." "About what?" "About how I was going to tell her the truth. About how I was going to explain that everything between us had started as a lie. About how I was going to look her in the eyes and tell her I'd been sent to manipulate her, to use her feelings against her own father." "Just wondering what happens after," I said instead. "After we bring him down, what happens to you?" She sat back on her heels, considering. "I don't know. I've been so focused on stopping him that I haven't really thought about what comes after. Maybe I'll actually get to practice law for something other than revenge. Maybe I'll travel. Maybe—" She looked at me, her eyes soft. "Maybe I'll see what it's like to build something instead of tearing it down. With someone. I'd like that, with the right someone." The weight of my deception felt like it was crushing me. Every day I didn't tell her the truth. I was digging the grave of whatever we had deeper. That night, as she slept beside me, I made a decision. I was going to tell her everything. I was going to confess that I'd been hired to spy on her, that our meeting hadn't been accidental, that I'd been playing a role from the very beginning. But I was also going to tell her that somewhere along the way, the role had become real. That I'd fallen in love with her courage, her passion, her unwavering commitment to justice. That I wanted to help her bring down her father, not because I was being paid to, but because it was the right thing to do. I was going to tell her in the morning. I never got the chance. I woke up to find her sitting at her kitchen table, laptop open, face pale as death. On the screen was security footage from Wells Industries, footage of me breaking into James Wells' office 2 weeks earlier. "Was any of it real?" she asked without looking up. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the fracture underneath, like ice cracking before it breaks. I sat down across from her, my hands shaking. "Bridget, I can explain. Can you?" She finally looked at me, and the pain in her eyes was like a physical blow. "Can you explain why you've been lying to me? For 4 months? Can you explain why you broke into my father's office? Can you explain why someone paid you to seduce me? How did you—" "I'm not stupid, Elena. Or should I say Olivia? Yes, I know your real name. I know you're a corporate spy. I know Thomas Greenspan hired you to get close to me." She closed the laptop with a sharp click. "What I don't know is why I was stupid enough to believe that someone could actually care about me for who I am, not what I could give them." The tears in her eyes were killing me. "Bridget, please." "Yes, Greenspan hired me. Yes, I lied about who I was. But everything else, everything between us, it's real." "Is it?" She stood up, pacing to the window. "How can I believe anything you say? How can I trust someone who's been playing a role for months? Because I'm not playing a role anymore." I stood too, desperate to make her understand. "I stopped playing a role the first time you smiled at me. I stopped playing a role when you told me about your father and I saw the pain in your eyes. I stopped playing a role when I realized I was falling in love with you." She whirled around, eyes blazing. "Don't you dare say that to me. Don't you dare use that word after what you've done." "I love you," I said again, stepping closer. "I know you don't believe me, but it's true. I love your strength, your compassion, your dedication to justice. I love the way you make me want to be better than I am. I love, stop. Her voice was a whisper, but it cut through my words like a blade. Just stop. She walked past me toward the door, and I realized she was asking me to leave. Bridget, please, don't do this. Let me help you finish what we started. Let me prove that I'm on your side. She paused at the door, her back to me. You want to prove you're on my side? Then stay away from me. Stay away from my father. Stay away from this entire situation. I can't do that. Why not? Because I won't let him hurt you. She turned then, and for a moment, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Hope, maybe, or the ghost of what we'd had. But then it was gone, replaced by cold resolve. He's already hurt me, she said quietly. He sent you. I didn't see her for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of staring at my phone, wanting to call but knowing she wouldn't answer. 3 weeks of sitting in my apartment, surrounded by evidence of James Wells' crimes, unable to decide what to do with it. Greenspan called daily. He wanted his intelligence, wanted to know when I was going to deliver the final blow against Wells. I kept putting him off, telling him I needed more time, more evidence. The truth was, I couldn't bring myself to use what I'd learned. Using it would mean betraying Bridget's trust even further, and I'd already done enough damage. But Wells wasn't waiting for me to make up my mind. The news broke on a Thursday morning. Environmental liar dies in suspicious car crash. The victim was Sarah Chun, a young attorney who had been building a case against Wells Industries. No relation to me, despite the shared surname, but that didn't make her death any less devastating. I was staring at the news report when my phone rang, Bridget's name on the screen. Did you see the news? She asked without preamble. Yeah. He's accelerating the timeline. Sarah was close to filing charges. Now she's dead and her files are missing. Bridget, where are you? Are you safe? I'm fine, but I need to move fast. I'm going to expose him at the charity gala next week. It's the perfect opportunity. All the media will be there. All the people who need to see the truth. That's suicide. If he's killed 6 people to protect his secrets, what do you think he'll do to you? He won't kill his own daughter, not publicly. Not where everyone can see. You don't know that. No, I don't. But I know I can't let anyone else die because I was too scared to act. There was a pause, and then she said, I could use your help. My help? I need someone to access his private server during the gala. Someone who knows how to break into secure systems. Someone who ... She took a breath. Someone I can trust. To do the right thing, even if I can't trust them with my heart. The words cut deep, but I pushed past the pain. What do you need me to do? The charity gala was held at the Grand Ballroom of the Meridian Hotel. 500 of the city's most powerful people, all dressed in evening wear that cost more than most people's annual salaries. I wore a black suit that Bridget had sent over, along with a note, for the woman who taught me that some truths are worth fighting for. I found her by the bar, stunning in an emerald green gown that brought out the fire in her eyes. She was talking to a senator's wife, playing the part of the dutiful daughter attending her father's charity event. Elena, she said when she saw me, her voice carefully neutral. I wasn't sure you'd come. I told you I'd help. Yes, you did. She excused herself from the senator's wife and stepped closer. The server is in his private office on the 40th floor. I've arranged for a distraction during his speech. Fire alarm on the 38th floor. You'll have maybe 10 minutes before security gets back to their posts. What about you? I'll be right here, playing the perfect daughter until it's time to destroy his life. I wanted to tell her to be careful, wanted to say so many things, but there were too many people around. Instead, I just nodded. Olivia. She caught my arm as I started to walk away. Whatever happens tonight, I want you to know ... I don't regret meeting you, even with all the lies, even with all the pain. I don't regret it. Before I could respond, she was gone, disappearing into the crowd. The 40th floor was eerily quiet. James Wells' office was a monument to ego, leather-bound books he'd never read, awards from organizations he'd probably bought, and a massive desk that screamed power and intimidation. His computer was password protected, but I'd been doing this. For 15 years, I had it cracked in 3 minutes. What I found in his files was worse than anything I'd imagined. Not just environmental crimes, but human trafficking, money laundering, arms dealing. James Wells wasn't just a corporate criminal. He was a monster who'd built his empire on the suffering of thousands of people. I was copying the files to my drive when I heard the elevator ding. Footsteps in the hallway. I had maybe 30 seconds before security found me. I grabbed the drive and headed for the window. 40 floors up, rappelling equipment in my bag. Just like old times. Except this time, I wasn't running from the scene of a crime. I was running toward justice. I made it back to the ballroom just as James Wells was taking the stage. He looked every inch the respectable businessman. Silver hair, expensive suit, the kind of smile that had probably charmed his way out of a dozen scandals. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "tonight we celebrate the power of giving back to her." Community ... double quotes. I found Bridget in the crowd. She was standing near the stage, her face a mask of calm. But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands were clenched at her sides. Wells Industries has always been committed to environmental responsibility and community welfare. That's when Bridget moved. She walked calmly to the side of the stage, where she had apparently planted a laptop connected to the projection system. James Wells was still talking, oblivious to what was about to happen. Double quotes ... and that's why I'm proud to announce a new $50 million initiative to protect our waterways ... The screens behind him suddenly filled with documents, financial records showing bribes to EPA officials, internal memos discussing how to cover up pollution incidents, photos of sick children in the villages downstream from Wells facilities. The ballroom erupted in chaos. James Wells spun around, his face purpling with rage when he saw what was displayed behind him. The cameras that had been recording his speech were now capturing his reaction to being exposed. "You ungrateful bitch," he screamed at Bridget, his carefully constructed facade crumbling completely. "After everything I've given you..." But Bridget wasn't done. She took the microphone from the stunned MC. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chaos, "while my father talks about environmental responsibility, let me show you what that really looks like." More documents flashed on the screens. The evidence I'd just stolen from his office, combined with years of intelligence she'd gathered. A complete picture of corruption, murder, and environmental destruction. That's when James Wells snapped. He lunged at her, but security was already moving. Not to protect him, to arrest him. The FBI agents who'd been posing as waiters were. Suddenly everywhere, badges out, weapons drawn. "James Wells, you're under arrest for conspiracy, murder, environmental crimes, and about 50 other charges will add up later. In the chaos that followed, I lost sight of Bridget. FBI agents were arresting James Wells. Reporters were shouting questions, and the city's elite were either trying to distance themselves from Wells or figure out how to spin their association with him. I found her on the hotel's rooftop garden, sitting on a bench overlooking the city. She'd changed out of her gown into jeans and a sweater, and she looked younger somehow, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "It's over," she said when she saw me. "He's going to prison for the rest of his life. How do you feel?" Empty, relieved, terrified, all at once. She looked at me. "I suppose you'll be collecting your fee from Greenspan now?" "I already called." Him. Told him the job was done, but I wouldn't be accepting payment. Why not? I sat down beside her, careful to leave space between us, because I didn't do it for him. I did it for you. For the victims, for the truth, and for yourself. Yeah, for myself too. To prove that I could be more than just a spy. For hire. We sat in silence for a while, watching the city lights twinkle below us. Finally, she spoke. I've been thinking about what you said, about loving me. My heart clenched. Bridget, I believe you, she said quietly. I believe that you fell in love with me somewhere along the way. I believe that you wanted to protect me, wanted to help me. I believe that your feelings became real, but I don't know if I can ever trust you completely. I don't know if I can build something real with someone who started by lying to me. The words hurt, but I understood. I know, I don't expect you to forgive me. I just thought. I wanted you to know that what we had wasn't all pretense. The best parts of it were real. She turned to look at me then, and I saw tears in her eyes. The best parts were real for me too. That's what makes this so hard. So what happens now? Now I try to figure out who I am when I'm not fighting my father. Now I try to help the people he hurt. Now I try to build something positive instead of just tearing down something negative. And us? She was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. Maybe someday, when enough time has passed, when the wounds aren't so fresh, maybe we can find our way back to each other. But right now, I need space to heal. I nodded, swallowing. Past the lump in my throat, I understand. Do you? Because I need you to stay away from me, Olivia. I need you to let me figure out who I am without you. Can you do that? If that's what you need, it is. I stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I know exactly who you are. You're the bravest, most compassionate person I've ever met. You're someone who risked everything to protect people you'd never met. You're someone who chose justice over safety, truth over comfort. Whatever else happens, don't let anyone convince you that you're anything less than extraordinary. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. Why did you have to lie to me? Why couldn't you have just been Alana Martinez, freelance journalist, from the beginning? Because then I never would have met you. And despite everything, despite the pain and the betrayal and the mistakes, I wouldn't trade these 4 months for anything. I was in my apartment, packing up the last of my files on the Wells case, when there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Bridget standing there, looking nervous and beautiful and completely unexpected. Hi, she said. Hi, I heard you moved. New apartment, new identity, new life. Something like that. I'm trying to go legitimate. Consulting work, helping law enforcement agencies with white-collar crime. Turns out there is a market for someone with my particular skill set. Good for you. She shifted her weight, looking around my half-packed apartment. I also heard you turn down 3 other jobs like the Wells case. High-profile, high-paying jobs. I did. Why? I considered my answer carefully. Because I realized I don't want to be the person who lies for a living anymore. I want to be the person who tells the truth, even when it's hard. She smiled then, the first real smile I'd seen from her since that night at the gala. That's why I'm here, actually. I have a proposition for you. I'm listening. I'm starting a foundation. Legal aid for victims of corporate crime, environmental cleanup, medical support for affected communities. I need someone who understands how these criminals think, someone who can help us build cases that will actually stick. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a chance to use your skills for something good, permanently. I studied her face, looking for any sign of what this meant for us personally. And us? I don't know, she said honestly. I'm still hurt. I'm still angry. But I've also realized that holding on to that anger is poisoning me. I want to try to forgive you, Olivia. I want to try to trust you again. It won't be easy. No, it won't. But maybe that's okay. Maybe the best things are worth fighting for, even when the fight is with ourselves. She stepped closer, and I caught that familiar scent of jasmine and possibility. So, what do you say? Want to save the world with me? I thought about everything that had brought us to this moment. The lies, the betrayal, the pain, but also the love, the truth, the possibility of redemption. I like that, I said. She smiled again, and this time she leaned in and kissed me. It was soft, tentative, like we were both learning how to do this all over again. When we broke apart, she rested her forehead against mine. This is going to be complicated, she warned. I know. We're going to have to learn how to trust each other again. I know. And if you ever lie to me again, I will destroy you in ways that would make my father proud. I laughed, recognizing the fierce protectiveness that had made me fall in love with her in the first place. Understood. Good. She stepped back, suddenly businesslike. Now, let's talk about your salary. And your first case. There's this pharmaceutical company that's been cutting corners on their vaccines. As she talked, as she outlined her plans to take on the next corporate monster, I realized that this was my second chance. My chance to be the person I'd pretended. To be the person she'd made me want to become. Corporate espionage had taught me that the most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves, like pretending I could resist her, like pretending this wasn't love from the very first dance. But it also taught me something else. Sometimes the greatest truth comes from the ashes of our greatest lies. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get the chance to build something real on the foundation of something false. This was my chance. Our chance, and I wasn't going to waste it. I'm sitting in our new office, yes, our office, watching Bridget pace behind her desk as she tears apart a pharmaceutical executive on the phone. She's wearing a navy suit that makes her look like the warrior she's always been, and there's a fire in her eyes that tells me whoever's on the other end of that call is about to have a very bad day. Mr. Davidson, I don't think you understand. She says, her voice deceptively calm. We have documentation proving your company knowingly shipped contaminated vaccines to developing countries. We have the internal emails where your executives joked about third world testing, and we have the names of 47 children who died because of your greed. She pauses, listening to whatever excuse he's giving her. No, Mr. Davidson, we won't be settling out of court. We'll be seeing you in federal prison. She hangs up and turns to me with a satisfied smile. The Henderson case, closed. 15 executives indicted, $200 million in damages for the victims' families. I lean back in my chair, not bad for a day's work. It's been a year since we started the foundation together. A year of learning to trust each other again, of building something real from the ashes of our deception. It hasn't been easy. There were nights when old wounds reopened, moments when the weight of what I'd done threatened to destroy us all over again. But we fought for it. We fought for us. You know what I love about this? Bridget says, coming around to sit on the edge of my desk. We're not just catching the bad guys anymore. We're actually saving people. She's right. In 12 months, we've taken down 6 major corporations, secured over $1 billion in damages for victims, and helped pass 3 pieces of environmental legislation. But more than that, we've built something together that neither of us could have created alone. I got an interesting call today, I tell her. The FBI wants to offer me a consulting position. Full-time, legitimate, pension and everything. That's amazing. She pauses, and I can see the worry creep into her eyes. You're not thinking of taking it, are you? Depends. On what? I stand up, moving to the window that overlooks the city. on whether my current boss would be willing to make me a partner instead of just an employee. When I turn back, she's grinning. I think that could be arranged. But I should warn you, the benefits package includes having to put up with me. For the foreseeable future, deal with it. Bridget, I'm counting on it. She comes to stand beside me at the window, and I slip my arm around her waist. Below us, the city sprawls out in all its messy, beautiful, corrupt glory. Somewhere down there, another corporate executive is probably poisoning people for profit. Another whistleblower is gathering courage to speak truth to power. Another person is deciding whether to do the right thing or the easy thing. What are you thinking about? Bridget asks. Just all of it. How we got here. How much has changed. Do you regret any of it? The lying? The betrayal? The pain I caused? You? Yeah, I regret all of that. I turn to look at her. But I don't regret meeting you. I don't regret falling in love with you. And I don't regret that everything we went through led us here. She smiles, that radiant smile that still makes my heart skip beats. You know what I realized the other day? What? That first night at the salsa studio, when you were so terrible at dancing. I knew you were lying about something. Nobody is that bad at salsa accidentally. I laugh. You knew? I suspected. But I also knew that whatever brought you to me, you were falling for me just as hard as I was falling for you. And that felt real, even when everything else was fake. So why didn't you call me out? Because I was curious. Because I wanted to see what you'd do. Because ... she shrugs. Because sometimes the best things start with the worst reasons. A knock at the door interrupts us. Maria, our paralegal, sticks her head in. Sorry to interrupt, but we just got a call. There's a situation developing with Titan Industries. Something about contaminated water supplies and covered up health. Studies. Bridget and I exchange glances. We know Titan Industries, chemical manufacturer, history of environmental violations, and a CEO who makes James Wells look like a chore boy. How bad? I ask. Potential cancer cluster affecting 3 towns. At least a dozen suspicious deaths. And the EPA inspector who was investigating mysteriously transferred to Alaska last week. Classic corporate playbook, Bridget mutters. Eliminate the threats, bury the evidence, deny everything. What do you want me to tell them? Bridget looks at me, and I can see the fire kindling in her eyes again. The same fire that made me fall in love with her in the first place. Tell them we'll take the case, she says. And tell them we're going to need a bigger war room. As Maria leaves, Bridget turns back to me. You ready for another fight? With you, always. Even if it gets dangerous. Even if they come after. Use. I think about James Wells, rotting in federal prison where he belongs. I think about the families who finally got justice, the communities that are finally healing, the corporate executives who now think twice before putting profits over people. I think about the woman standing beside me, who taught me that some truths are worth fighting for, that some battles are worth the scars they leave behind, especially then, I say. She kisses me then, soft and fierce and full of promise. When we break apart, she rests her forehead against mine. I love you, Olivia Chen, she whispers, lies and all, past and present and future. I love you too, Bridget Wells. Thank you for teaching me how to dance. Thank you for learning. Outside, the city hums with its usual chaos of dreams and crimes and second chances. And somewhere in a boardroom across town, the executives at Titan Industries are about to learn what happens when you mess with people under the protection of the Wells Foundation. They have no idea what's coming for them, but they're about to find out. Because corporate espionage taught me one final truth. The most dangerous thing in the world isn't a spy who lies for money. It's a spy who's found something worth telling the truth for. And I found mine.